liberal Christian roots are visible in the windows of some of our older congregations. As an example, the Arlington Street Unitarian Universalist Church, a force for progressive religion in Boston since 1729, features a Tiffany window of John the Baptist. Many Unitarian Universalists, or UUs, have a relationship with Christianity. Whether we're moving away from a rigid Christian upbringing or moving toward an all-loving God, whether we call ourselves Christian or simply admire Jesus, we have a place in Unitarian Universalism. Our faith tradition grew from Christianity, and one of the 6 sources we draw upon in our worship and religious education is Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Most Unitarian Universalist Christians believe in God, but not the traditional God as Trinity that most Christian churches promote. The UU Christian God is all-loving, as our Universalist forebears taught, and is unity, as our Unitarians forebears taught. This God is too big to be contained in one person, one book, one tradition, or one time in history. To UU Christians, Jesus is an inspiration, and his teachings are profound. He possesses a divine spark that is born in all of us and can be cultivated our whole lives long. Our congregations celebrate Christmas and Easter with a liberal and inclusive twist. Our style of worship and day of worship are from the Christian tradition, even though our worship draws from many sources. The Bible and its many interpretations have largely shaped our history. Some of our UU congregations are Christian in orientation, worshiping regularly with the New Testament, offering communion, and celebrating Christian holidays throughout the year. All of our congregations welcome people with Christian backgrounds and beliefs. Now, 7 Unitarian Universalists and some of our own members share their different beliefs about God, reflecting the wide range of conceptions of the divine among Unitarian Universalists.
UU Views of God by the Reverend Paul Razor, UU Congregation, Rock Tavern. Many people have questioned whether any concept of God can be meaningful in a modern scientific world. Others, however, find the idea of God to be profoundly meaningful. Among Unitarian Universalists and other religious liberals, conceptions range across a wide spectrum. Some reject God altogether and hold a strictly atheistic view of the universe. Others may use the term God to convey very different ideas, such as the creative power of evolution in the universe, or the power that makes transformation possible in our lives, or the ongoing power of love, or simply the ultimate mystery within which we all must live. And while few UUs think of God as a supernatural being, many understand themselves to be in some sort of personal relationship with God, however conceived. Many also stress the feminine aspects of the divine by invoking goddess imagery and using metaphors such as mother or sister in place of traditional metaphors for God, such as Father or Lord. Theologians remind us that the symbol God can serve several important functions. First, it offers a vision of the highest values of truth, justice, love, and goodness toward which we strive. In this sense, it serves as a standard against which to measure ourselves and our achievements. Second, the concept of God can remind us of the relativity and limitations of our own ideas. Here, it serves as a corrective to our biases and a basis for critical reflection. Finally, by bringing together our highest ideals in a single symbol, the idea of God provides a focus for personal devotion or communal worship. These are among the many reasons why God continues to be an important and meaningful symbol for many Unitarian Universalists today.
Life force. by Reverend Scotty McClellan, Director of Religious Services, Stanford University in Stanford, California. As a young child, I thought of God as a magical, all-powerful being who was responsible for everything that happened, good or bad. Later in childhood, I began to feel I had a cause and effect relationship to God, gaining some control over good and bad results by how I prayed, petitioned, and behaved. Then in my teenage years, God became personalized for me as the ideal parent, unconditionally accepting and loving. By the time I was in my 20s, God had become an impersonal force of energy in the universe. I still resonate most closely with William Wordsworth's way of describing God in Tintern Abbey. A sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns and the round ocean and the living air and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. Yet in my 50s, I've also begun to pray to God as a person again, especially in times of great need and great joy. I do that even as I know God intellectually as an impersonal life force. So I live in paradox and ambiguity with God now, often simply feeling overcome with awe as spirit fills me from some source far beyond my own conscious control.
Mystery. Kate Lohr, Social Justice Director, First Unitarian Church, Portland, Oregon. My faith is pretty simple and rock solid. It feeds my soul, is the source of my joy, and colors all that I do. I experience God as love, light, power, and wisdom. The God I pray to is both transcendent and immanent, a part of me, but also greater than me. Sometimes I experience God as a light that comes to me in the darkness. This light emanates intense love and compassion and leaves me feeling joyous and connected to all of creation. Other times I simply hear God's guidance. It seems similar to a nudge or sometimes a whisper. This guidance usually comes suddenly and clearly, and it can arrive while I am deep in prayer or simply going about my business of the day, such as when I'm doing the dishes. I am usually shy about sharing my experiences of God because I can't explain God in an intellectual manner. I experience the sacred through my heart, and when I try to define it with words, the words always fall short of my experience. Such is the mystery. I consider myself to be both a Unitarian Universalist and a Christian mystic.
The Web of Existence by Reverend Kathy Huff, Associate Minister of the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Arlington, Massachusetts. Long before I knew anything about physics, I sensed that life is woven together by invisible threads of being, that the earth and all that lies beyond it emanate not from one source, but from a complex web of existence and energy that spans time and space. And while I believe that there are conscious connections and interdependent relationships within this great web of existence, I do not like the word God or goddess to describe it. The universe that I experience has no moral aspect. There is no underlying plan or message to be discerned. Giving intentionality to life is a human tendency. The beauty and excitement of being human is that we have infinite opportunities to make our own meaning. This reality forces me to share viscerally in the full range of the earth's joy and suffering. It requires that I work for justice and the transformation of all that would marginalize or oppress. Being part of a conscious universe with no moral first cause means that each moment profoundly matters. Everything that I do, say, think, or feel relates to everything else and may have consequence and meaning beyond my comprehension. In the midst of life, I am in perpetual awe of the power of such a universe.
The Biblical God. Reverend Lisa Schwartz, chaplain, Substance Abuse Recovery Programs, Topeka, Kansas. The core of my Unitarian Universalism is my belief that no theology is universal. I believe that theology is more akin to autobiography than to rational speculation. My own Christian upbringing is probably the biggest reason I now call myself a Unitarian Universalist Christian. As a chaplain serving poor, often mentally ill and/or addicted people, I have found that any understanding of God that could really ground and sustain me would have to be equally accessible to the people I work with. For me, a recovering addict working in a treatment center for mostly poor and many minority clients, the story of struggle, sin, and redemption found in the Bible is key. As a literal story, the tale of Jesus' resurrection is hard to sustain. But as a metaphor that illustrates that there is life beyond the death of addiction, despair, and total loss, it's hard to beat. My ideas about God have even evolved into something vaguely Trinitarian. I believe we experience God on several different planes simultaneously, as the transcendent, mysterious other, as the force of life and inspiration within ourselves, and in the faces of other people, both our friends and our enemies.
Community by Anthony B. Pinn, Associate Professor, Religious Studies, Macalester College, St. Paul, Minnesota. It has been years since I have used the word God to explain anything about the world in which we live. The issue of evil and suffering prevents me from finding any comfort in this term. This is especially true when I consider the history and current needs of my own community, the African American community. The idea of God has had a mixed record at best with respect to the African American struggle for liberation, in my experience. It has often justified suffering by seeing it as a redemptive instead of encouraging a strong, consistent fight against injustice. I see no merit in this. I believe the tradition of African American humanism points to the human potential for progressive activity without any need of God talk. Mine is a firm atheism that avoids talk of transcendence. From my perspective, there is nothing behind the symbol God. In its place, I affirm the idea of community. It is in community that we are encouraged to develop our full human potential and overcome oppression.
The next statements are from our own members. This is from Harold Rood. My experience with what I refer to as God has transformed from a giving Santa Claus-like figure when I was young to a judgmental figure that shadowed my behavior in my teens, to a nebulous concept that is the answer for all things inexplicable to me.
For Margaret Anderson, I most feel the presence of something divine in nature, a place where there are few, if any, other people to be seen or heard. There's a huge live oak on a trail at Brazos Park where I feel that. Back when I could hike on trails and mountains, there were many godly vistas. I like the Jewish Reconstructionist concept of the divine. It's sort of like mysticism. God is everything, except the Reconstructionists say God is just all the good stuff, all the love, beauty, justice, etc. in the universe.
This next is from Janis LaRocque. I am an agnostic. Our planet is just a speck in our known universe. How could we possibly know everything? I believe God was created in the image of humans, complete with human gender and characteristics to help explain events that defy explanation. Almost all our human reactions can be reduced to chemistry, hormones, endorphins, adrenaline, and the like. But I have experienced times of great awe when I felt as if I was free of the physical restraints of my body and connected to the entire universe. Everything made sense for a brief moment. For me, it usually happens when I am playing or listening to music. I believe this sense of wonder, this moment of transcendence, is a belief in a higher power that we cannot conceive.
And now from Gary Putnam. That moment when you know you're going to be a father, that the universe has entrusted you to protect, nurture, and guide her to become the beautiful human being she is destined to be. That first soul-to-soul connection with your unborn daughter. That moment you hold her in your arms for the first time and then place her in her mother's arms. Those moments when our musical, creative duets reach that higher plane of existence. That moment when she realizes that she can float all by herself. That moment when she realized she doesn't need the training wheels on her birthday bike anymore. Those moments during her concerto performances that she, the orchestra, and the audience become one in spirit. That moment when she looked into the eyes and soul of her life partner to pledge her commitment to a life together through the good, bad, sublime. Those moments when I see through her eyes and into her soul as she experiences with her children the awe, wonder, and mystery I experienced with her. These are some of my moments of transcendence, moments when my ego is quiet, when I feel joined to something infinitely greater than myself, greater than humankind, a joyous ecstasy of awe, wonder, mystery, and peace. Relationship by Reverend Eric Walker Wickstrom, parish minister of the First Universalist Church in Yarmouth, Maine. When I was young, I believed in a personal God, a person who, though invisible, would probably look like one of Michelangelo's paintings. As I grew older, I came to believe in an impersonal God, a force like gravity or love or life itself. This later belief satisfied my mind for some time. Yet what was missing from the understanding of God for me was the quality of relationship, the actual experience of relationship with God, which I had known as a child and which, in my honest moments, I knew still, even though it no longer made sense. After much wrestling, I now believe in a personal God who is not a person, who is a mystery beyond my ability to comprehend, yet no less real for my confusion. This God is holy, other, yet also as close as my own breath, St. Augustine wrote. If you can understand it, it's not God. I cannot say what God is, though I know in my soul that God is. God is known by many names, yet it is not fully known by any name. Even so, God can be known and loved, and God loves us all.
Love, the Reverend Elizabeth K. Ellis, Senior Minister and Executive Director, Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry, Boston, Massachusetts. For 20 years, I have followed the practice of Ignatian contemplative prayer while ministering in a variety of settings in inner city communities. This path is one of activist spirituality. We deepen our experience of God through spiritual direction and prayer. We come to know that which is beyond our explanations, but which is always love. From the knowing and from the mutuality of the experience of love, we are called to be co-creators in the reign of God on earth. God is in the nitty-gritty work of loving one another in the social, economic, political, and material world. We are called to understand the world systems and its evils and to establish mutual love in spite of all our unlovability. At the same time, through attention to prayer, we discover God, who beckons us to know mystery in life. We discover a love without beginning or end in which we live, which lives in us, and which offers us unimaginable joy beyond our expectations. In summary, we have looked at Unitarian Universalism's Christian roots. Our very name, Unitarian, denotes a single deity rather than the Trinitarian God of mainstream Christianity. We have listened to UU ministers and our own members describe the essence of their personal views and experiences of the animating energy that drives this existence in which we find ourselves. In keeping with our third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, and our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, this has been a sharing of what can be termed relating to the deep mystery of existence outside of institutional religion. Personal attempts to keep the baby while tossing out the bathwater. Blessed be and amen.